Incredible act of bravery. Black Uber Eats driver saves young boy from gunfire. Discover the Unex. Jamal's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than usual as the sun dipped below the skyline of Chicago. The hustle of Friday night was in full swing, the city alive with energy that charged the air. He adjusted his phone, glancing at the map that blinked with incoming orders, reminded of the pressure on his shoulders, the responsibilities linked to each meal he delivered. Working long hours meant a steady flow of cash to help support his mother and younger sister. But as he navigated the familiar streets of the South Side, joy mixed with a familiar heaviness in his chest, a sense of impending dread that clawed at him when he thought about how fleeting stability could be. Watching families enjoy time at the park brought back memories of innocence he cherished but couldn't afford to lose himself in. Laughter and kids chasing each other turned bittersweet as he thought of his sister's dreams. He owed it to her to make something of himself, even if it meant sacrificing his own quiet life. Deep down, he wrestled with the mixed emotions, that constant battle between aspiration and despair. What if he could never give them more than this daily grind? Parked near the edge of the night scene, a sudden burst of gunfire shattered the calm. The sound echoed violently, as if piercing through the fabric of his existence. Adrenaline ignited. Without hesitation, he leaped from his car and sprinted toward the chaos. His heart raced with a fear he'd never known, fear for the innocent lives caught in a cycle of violence. An image registered in his mind, a small body crumpling to the ground. An instinct to protect washed over him, igniting a fire within that pushed him into the storm. As he reached the boy, cradling him and assessing the damage, his thoughts spiraled. What if he was painted as a villain in the eyes of those who misunderstood him? The weight of traditional expectations collided with his need to defend the defenseless, steepening his guilt. Would he be seen as a hero, or just another statistic, a cautionary tale of life in the hood? Social judgment clung to him, reminding him of the prejudice that often overshadowed the good, festering doubt gripping his heart violently tighter with every unanswered question. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The sirens blared in the distance like a haunting chorus to his newfound fame, potential notoriety unfurling before him. The media loved a story like this, a tale of bravery that ignited discussions and debates. Yet, he found himself spiraling deeper into a pit of turmoil. How could he reconcile his helplessness with the expectations thrust upon him? The very system that should protect his community seemed poised to turn against him, painting him as just another product of his environment. How far would the narrative stretch? He felt the weight of the world press down harder. Each breath felt like a defiance against pressures he couldn't fully articulate. Families skimming the surface of existence faced darker realities, but here he was, holding the crux of change in his hands. In this moment, with the community's scrutiny bearing down upon him, Jamal couldn't help but wonder, what did it truly mean to sacrifice for better? Would his moment of heroism merely be forgotten, like so many others, leaving him shackled to the cycle he desperately wanted to break? The air crackled with tension, leaving him confronting one relentless question. Would his fleeting brightness burn out too soon, leaving nothing behind but shadows? Jamal sat in the back of the patrol car, his heart pounding as he processed the events that had unfolded. The atmosphere inside felt charged with a mixture of gratitude and fear, the sirens fading as the chaos outside transitioned to a heavy silence. He could see flashes from journalists' cameras through the windshield, their lenses hungry for images that would capture the unfolding drama. The weight of the moment pressed on him. This wasn't merely a news story, it was an instant of reckoning, a crossroads in his life. As the officers discussed the incident, Jamal became lost in thought, reflecting on the narrative spiraling around him. The idea that he could be deemed a hero struck him as both bizarre and profound. Did saving the boy elevate him above the shadows that had always threatened to engulf him, or would it ultimately serve as a cruel reminder that such moments are fleeting? His mind raced with questions about the aftermath. While families celebrated his actions, would others remain skeptical or worse, dismissive? Jamal's muscles tensed at the thought of being just another headline, a transient moment blown up into something grand, only to fade with the next breaking news. No, he wanted his efforts to mean something deeper. When the officers finally exited to gather more information from witnesses, a reflective calm washed over him, broken only by the impending reality of what lay ahead. He couldn't just ride the wave of this newfound attention. He needed to find a way to channel it into something lasting. Perhaps he could inspire others. After all, he had survived a world torn apart by violence, and to speak on that could be a call for change. Before stepping out of the patrol car, he pulled out his phone and opened his notes app, fingers trembling slightly as he began to jot down thoughts. "Narrative is power," he typed, the phrase echoing in his mind. Was it possible to reshape the story, not just about him, but about the community he loved? He envisioned a blog or social media platform dedicated to sharing personal experiences that would allow others to see the truth beyond statistics, a chance to foster understanding and healing. With each stroke of the keyboard, a sense of determination grew stronger within him. This was a pivotal moment, not just for him, but perhaps for others trapped in cycles they felt powerless to escape. He leaned back against the seat, exhaling slowly, and began forming a plan to use this narrative momentum for good. As he stepped into the light of the street, the crowd still lingering, cameras snapping, Jamal realized he had a choice. He could let the fear of being misunderstood dictate his actions, or he could use this visibility to carve a space for open dialogue. In a flash, the idea crystallized: education sessions in schools, sharing his story in community centers, bringing in resources for those struggling to see a way out. But what Jamal didn't realize was that other forces were at work, watching him closely and ready to challenge his path. The moment had come to face the complexities of social dynamics, to confront the stark realities of a world eager to label him. As he exited the realm of sirens and flashes into the broader world that lay ahead, he could feel the currents of change swirling around him, waiting for him to take the first step. Would he be able to navigate the treacherous waters of his own creation? Would he rise above the narrative imposed on him, or be swept away by it? Jamal tightened his grip on his phone, his newfound plan igniting a flicker of hope. The time had come to face whatever waited just beyond the horizon, the reality of his choices lurking like shadows in the evening light. As Jamal moved away from the patrol car and into the murmurs of the crowd, he felt an electric current running beneath his skin. Each step resonated with an unfamiliar urgency, a blending of fear and exhilaration. He needed to redefine this narrative, not just for himself, but for the countless voices craving validation amid the noise of skepticism. The immediate aftermath of his actions pulsated with potential, but he knew it wouldn't last forever. People began to notice him, their expressions a mix of awe and interrogation, mirroring Jamal's own inner turmoil. He stood at the periphery, pondering how to communicate his vision without being consumed by it. Above all, he had to remain anchored amid the swell of attention. He couldn't afford to slip into the chaos of being a mere headline. He had to be the author of his own story. "Jamal!" a voice broke through, Officer Reyes, his expression casual, but Jamal could sense a deeper scrutiny behind the officer's cordial demeanor. "You, good man, want to say something to the press?" The question hung in the air, one that could define his trajectory. Jamal hesitated, heart racing. Words could manipulate perception. They could build bridges or walls. "Yeah," he replied, voice steadying, "but I want it to be real. This isn't just about me." The officer raised an eyebrow. "You know that can be tough to control, right? Once they print it, you can't take it back." "Then help me," Jamal said, a newfound resolve coursing through him. "Help me frame this the right way." Jamal would no longer be a pawn in someone else's game. He would share the realities of his world, bring to light what often lurked in darkness. Officer Reyes nodded, sensing the shift in Jamal's demeanor. They retreated a few paces from the main crowd, away from prying eyes and cameras. The urgency fluttering in his chest morphed into clarity. "I've been thinking about setting up talks, organizing sessions in schools," Jamal confessed, the words flowing like a dam that had finally burst. "I want to share my story, show them it's not just violence or luck. There are choices, paths that they can take." "Sounds ambitious," Reyes replied, measuring the weight of Jamal's proposition. "Ambitious, yet necessary," Jamal responded firmly. The stakes felt higher now. He was stepping into uncharted territory, wielding hope in a world often shrouded in despair. "Let's talk to the community leaders and local schools," Reyes suggested. "Maybe we can lay some groundwork together. But you'll need to prepare. There will be pushback." Pushback. The word resonated deep, highlighting a reality Jamal had skirted around until now. What if his efforts faced derision instead of recognition? Could he handle the anger of those unwilling to hear his message? These questions gnawed at him, but they also fueled his determination. As conversations began, Jamal sensed the growing possibility of change, yet the path forward felt as jagged as broken glass. Each dialogue was a slippery slope. He could either be built up by community resolve or be shattered by its harsh criticisms. It was a fierce reminder of what lay ahead, the need for resilience, the internal fortitude to rise above the swirling narratives that had plagued him. Another thought crossed his mind. What if he could not only lead discussions, but also gather experiences from others? If voices like his could be amplified, pooling their stories into a chorus of hardships and triumphs, perhaps a movement could emerge. A quiet resolve solidified. Failure wasn't an option. But even as he set this new course, an unsettling chill crept over him. A flicker of doubt once again edged its way into his mind. The spectre of being reduced to nothing but a stereotype loomed large. Would others see his struggle or merely characterize him? Would he dare to confront the personal demons that had shadowed his life? Jamal straightened his shoulders, the weight of his purpose stark against the threatening shadows. He knew he was just at the beginning of his journey, and the true test awaited him. What he didn't realize was that there were forces lurking beneath the surface, ready to challenge his every move. The moment was coming when he would have to confront an antagonist that could threaten to derail everything he hoped to achieve. Jamal's heart thudded as he processed Officer Reyes's words. His vision had begun to crystallize into something actionable, yet the gravity of it all loomed heavily. He realized he was no longer a passive observer in his narrative. He was stepping onto a stage, armed with nothing but his story and the hope of change. But hope can be twofold, an empowering force or a dangerous illusion. After the initial interviews, Jamal found himself navigating a world he'd never truly engaged with. The clamor of media was deafening, not just for him, but for the individuals who had begun to rally around his story. Social media lit up, and even discussions within his neighborhood buzzed. Yet, amid the accolades and virtual applause, Jamal questioned whether this attention would drown out the authenticity of his message. He found solace in his late-night reflections, where doubt and determination collided. I have to speak from the heart, he murmured to himself, pacing in his cramped room. If I lose that, I lose everything. Am I ready for this? His mind raced with strategies to connect his experience to a larger narrative that could foster understanding but didn't pander to sensationalism. As he refined his thoughts, an unsettling realization surfaced. He had reached a point where external perceptions held significant sway over his identity, and if he wasn't careful, he could easily become another facet of a narrative designed by others. He needed ground rules for himself, boundaries against the encroaching chaos. The following day, Jamal met with Reyes again, determined to chart a course that felt true to his purpose. "We have to lay the groundwork carefully," he began, voice low and serious. "I'll do talks, but I won't just be sharing my story. I want to invite others in. I need to highlight their struggles too. It can't be a solo act." Reyes nodded supportively. "We can structure it around community discussions, perhaps even workshops, but I worry about the backlash. Some may not want to hear those journeys." Jamal paused, weighing the potential for conflict against the necessity for truth. "That's exactly why it's important. We have to confront the uncomfortable. But what if I stumble? What if they don't see the value in this?" His vulnerability hung in the air, stark and genuine. Reyes leaned closer, eyes steady. "If you stumble, own it. Authenticity breeds connection, even in awkward moments." Fortified by Reyes's perspective, Jamal focused on preparing. The ambition that had sparked inside him began to ignite into a flame. As he penned his thoughts, they transformed into a narrative, bypassing the immediate drama for deeper truths, fearless reflections on choice, consequence, and the latent power of learned experiences. On the day of their first community meeting, uncertainty gripped Jamal like a chilling embrace. His internal voice screamed, "What if I'm mocked? What if this doesn't resonate?" But he reminded himself of his core, the reason he started this journey. The youth needed to know they weren't alone, and that change was rooted in choices made daily. As he stood before a small assembly of eager yet skeptical faces, heart racing, his mouth dry, he channeled the very essence of these voices. "I'm here today to tell you we can choose our path." The audience's gaze felt penetrating, each stare pressed on him, waiting for something profound. Suddenly, a voice piped up from the back, spitting venom. "You think you can just come in here and preach? What do you know about real life?" It was a challenge, and Jamal's pulse quickened. This was the pushback Reyes had warned him about, the first test of both his resolve and the message he intended to deliver. How would he respond? Would he defend himself, or guide the discussion to a larger conversation about truth and personal experience? Jamal took a deep breath, recognizing the glaring opportunity for confrontation, not just with the speaker, but with the fears within himself. Suddenly, he felt a shift inside him, unleashing a rush of confidence. The moment crystallized, a battle against judgment rooted in not just his dedicated resolve, but in the collective understanding he'd hoped to cultivate. In that heated moment, Jamal knew this was only the beginning. A ripple had started, and as tensions mounted, he felt an undercurrent of strength rising within him, a fortification for the storm to come. The challenge had emerged, but one question loomed larger as he faced the skeptical crowd. Could Jamal transform this challenge into an invitation for dialogue, or would it crush his newfound ambition before it even began to take flight? Jamal stood before the audience, their skepticism palpable, like a tightrope strung above a canyon of doubt. The initial shock of the aggressive question hung in the air, a tangible challenge that forced him to pivot from fear to action. He could almost hear the ticking clock of expectation pressing against him as he recalled the lives he aimed to represent, the voices stifled by the very realities he sought to untangle. With a clarity that only emerged in moments of pressure, he took a step forward and engaged with the audience. "I might not have all the answers," he began, his voice steady despite its earlier tremor. But what I do have is my story, a series of decisions molded by pain, hope, and resilience. I'm not here to preach, I'm here to open a door to a conversation. The simplicity of his words disarmed some, yet he perceived a tension that remained like an electric hum. Uncertainty flickered across faces, challenging him to dig deeper. Jamal was razor-focused now, peeling back the layers of discomfort with each word. We all face moments when we must decide, fight or flight, silence or speak out. I chose to speak out because I believe that dialogue can lead to change, both personally and collectively. He watched as the crowd shifted. Some leaned in, curiosity igniting behind guarded expressions. Others remained dismissive, folding their arms tighter as if to shield themselves from the vulnerability he offered. Introspection collided with determination in Jamal's mind. He had always been optimistic, but now he faced a stark reality. True connection required more than just good intentions. He would need to embrace the very vulnerabilities he initially feared. Your experiences are valid. Each of you has a story worth telling. I'm not just a survivor. I'm a catalyst for us to confront the uncomfortable truths we live every day. The reaction was mixed. A few murmurs rippled through the audience, reflective nods met with defensive voices. Still, Jamal pressed on. Each choice we make impacts our paths, and every struggle teaches us something. What if we shared these lessons, rather than burying them under frustration? As he spoke, he witnessed a young woman in the front row, fighting back tears. It was as if she had been holding her breath, waiting for permission to let go of something painful. Encouraged, Jamal continued to build a bridge. If we confront these barriers together, we create a space where healing takes root. This meeting isn't just about me, it's about all of us engaging in our truths. At that moment, a brave hand shot up amidst the crowd. "What makes you think your pain matters to us?" another voice challenged, but this time it came from a place that resembled curiosity, not outright hostility. Jamal's heart raced again, but he recognized this exchange as critical, an opportunity to further the dialogue. "Because we can find common ground in pain," he replied evenly. "I know despair. I know the frustration of feeling unheard and unseen. We're not that different. And together, maybe our stories can make sense of the chaos." He anchored himself on the idea that vulnerability was a strength, a powerful tool to foster understanding. The room felt charged, the stakes heightened, but Jamal felt emboldened, driven by purpose rather than fear. As he wrapped up the discussion, fragments of hope flickered in the faces before him. Slowly, the audience began to embrace a cautious curiosity. The walls he sensed earlier were now punctured, revealing the potential for meaningful conversations about choices, consequences, and the power of unity. Yet even as connections sparked, Jamal felt a familiar tension rising again. Would this newfound engagement withstand the scrutiny and potential backlash? It would take more than one meeting to foster true dialogue and understanding. As he stepped off the makeshift stage, a lingering question echoed in his mind. Had he merely scratched the surface, or had he genuinely started something transformative? Jamal knew he had to return and delve deeper into these stories. But a deeper conflict rested within him. What would happen when the realities of those difficult discussions collided with his own? Would he emerge stronger? Or would the very foundation he aimed to build fracture under pressure? The answers beckoned him forward, each step heavier than the last, where he was bound to confront not just the experiences of others, but the unresolved scars of his past. Jamal hurried away from the stage, each step weighted with anticipation and anxiety. He found himself drawn into a small coffee shop nearby, where the ambient buzz felt like a cocoon, protective yet vibrant. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee clung to the air, mingling with the sharp scent of inspiration and uncertainty. He settled into a corner seat, an attempt to ground his racing thoughts. But even the comforting surroundings couldn't quiet the doubts gnawing at him. What had he really accomplished? As the caffeine brewed in his cup, so did the realization that to effect any change, he couldn't simply share his story. He had to live it. That meant revisiting painful memories he had locked away, a personal journey he had taken years to navigate alone. His eyes darted around the cafe, seeking reassurance from familiar faces, but all he saw were strangers wrapped up in their own lives. He pulled out a battered notepad, a tool for clarity he had turned to since his childhood. The pages were ink-stained with dreams and fears, ideas and sketches of what he wished to communicate. This time he began to write not just about the broader picture but about Jamal, the boy who felt voiceless in a world echoing with competing narratives. What lay ahead required more than courage. It called for active engagement with his past. Buried feelings of shame, disappointment, and loss threatened to rise once again, demanding his attention. He wrote furiously, tracing each encounter that shaped him and every regret that haunted him. Each word was a stone, thrown into his own tumultuous river, causing ripples that returned to the surface. Then a sudden realization struck him. If he had been negotiating the complexity of his identity alone, how many others were trapped in the same cycle? As defining as individual stories are, they often intertwine, each person's journey resting on a broader thematic tapestry. The faces he had seen in the audience earlier had excavated a similar yearning within him. They were searching for validation just like he had been. Determined to dive deeper, he decided that the next session would need interaction, real conversations crafted from the fabric of shared experiences. But what could he offer? Jamal needed to confront his own vulnerabilities, unpack them in front of others, and allow the audience to see that he was not just a mess of past burdens, but a dynamic individual willing to evolve. A sudden jerk of the chair beside him interrupted his thoughts. The barista, with a bright smile, placed his coffee down. "You look lost in thought. Everything all right?" she inquired with genuine curiosity. "Yeah, just thinking," he replied absently, but her question was a reminder. These small moments of connection were as vital to his journey as the grand speeches he intended to deliver. Noticing her inquisitive expression sparked a new idea. What if he began these sessions with an invitation for friends and strangers to join him in the discussion? Could their voices drive the narrative forward? The mere suggestion sent a chill of excitement down his spine. This was a pivotal fork in the road. Rather than solely articulating his pain, he could cultivate an environment where others felt empowered to voice theirs too. Every dialogue could unravel hidden stories, prompting him to face his own, while enabling healing in collective vulnerability. But thoughts of obstacles loomed like dark clouds. Would they be comfortable? What if they resisted, as some had earlier? Despite the potential hurdles, Jamal felt an undeniable pull, a flicker of determination igniting in his core. He got up from his seat, heart racing as if a dam had burst within. Clarity coursed through him. By understanding his journey, he could provide a mirror that reflected theirs. He would not just speak, he would listen deeply. The next step felt monumental. Above all doubts, Jamal resolved to create a space that welcomed exploration and honesty. As he left the coffee shop, a fresh sense of purpose flooded his being. That lightness brought with it another wave of questions charging at him. How would he manage the coming confrontations? Would the fractures of his own past interfere with the strength of new connections? With those queries pressing against him, Jamal knew the upcoming discussions required even more than he had previously prepared for. The path toward emotional clarity was riddled with challenges, but he felt ready to explore the shadows, his shadows, together with their light. Familiarity surged through him, propelling a sense of urgency. The time had come to truly face not only his audience, but himself. And with that insight, he braced for the revealing journey ahead, where the unknown lurked beneath each turn. Jamal stepped into the bustling street, the warm sun washing over his face as if to bless his newfound resolve. He felt raw, open to possibilities that had lain dormant for too long. Every breath he took filled him with a mix of trepidation and excitement, a preamble to an impending transformation. This new journey wasn't merely about his story. It was about crafting a tapestry where others could weave their threads alongside his. He wandered aimlessly, lost in thought, until he strolled past a local park. The sounds of laughter, the cadence of children's voices, and the rhythmic crunch of feet on gravel created a backdrop for his contemplation. Here, life played out in vivid colors, serving as a reminder of the innocence and joy he had long sought to preserve amid his struggles. But inquiry returned to him with intensity. Had his own vulnerability stripped life of beauty? Could shared pain lead to healing? A sudden burst of laughter made him stop. He turned to observe a group of kids playing tag, their energy infectious. He recalled his own childhood days, moments filled with laughter, but also tinged with a constant battle against the darker corners of his past. This juxtaposition tugged at him, happiness amid struggle, freedom intertwined with fear. Jamal sat on a nearby bench, his notepad in hand. With a determined grip, he began jotting down thoughts, a stream of consciousness born from the sight of carefree laughter. What was the essence of connection? Could he teach others to embrace their fears while simultaneously uplifting their voices? The park around him became a crucible for his ideas. He envisioned an open discussion not bound by fear or judgment, but anchored in the shared experience of life's complexities. But his excitement was tempered by a gnawing doubt. Would he be equipped to lead this exploration? The weight of responsibility began to settle on his shoulders. Facilitating conversations around vulnerability was as daunting as it was inspiring. He had spent years constructing walls to shield himself. How could he dismantle them while guiding others to do the same? His thoughts surged like tumultuous waves, crashing against his need for clarity. Jamal remembered the barista's encouraging smile. In that fleeting moment, she had reminded him that openness often begins with a single act of trust. Maybe the key to inviting others to converse lay in demonstrating his own authenticity, offering not just a safe space, but a model of what vulnerability truly looked like. The sun wavered lower in the sky as he began drafting a plan for his first gathering. He imagined inviting community members not only to listen, but to vocalize their truths. The deeper he delved into this thought, the more a flicker of excitement reignited within him. He would not be the solitary star in this narrative. He would foster a constellation of shared experiences. Yet the doubts lingered. The specter of judgment loomed large. What if they rejected this idea? What if his own journey was too painful, too messy for others to comprehend? Jamal pressed the pencil hard against the page, hoping it would impose clarity over chaos. But the questions multiplied. The finer he worked out the details, the more uncertainties flooded in. Who would show up? Would they open up? Could he handle their stories, their truths, alongside his? With renewed determination, Jamal closed his notepad. Leaving the park, he felt the vector of anxiety shift. No longer was it a paralyzing force. Instead, it served to sharpen his focus, prepare him for the openness ahead. He understood that connections, painful or joyous, were what knitted humanity together. He had to remind himself that leading others meant confronting his fears and weaknesses, embracing the full spectrum of his story. As night fell, the streetlights flickered on, illuminating his path. Just as he stepped toward the main road, a thought struck him. A realization that felt like a key unlocking a door. Could the essence of the stories he shared resonate beyond their individual narratives? Would they culminate into something larger, something empowering? That sparked a fear he didn't expect. The time was coming not just for him to listen, but to bravely hold the space for others. What if he wasn't enough? He quickened his pace, the internal conflict propelling him forward. He didn't have all the answers. He never would. But what lay ahead required more than merely speaking his truth. It meant embarking on a pilgrimage alongside those yearning to share theirs. Yet as uncertainty nested beside his hope, he felt an electrifying anticipation take root. The moment of truth was on the horizon, and Jamal could feel it calling him forward. The journey was about to unfold, and with each step he could sense a potential waiting to be ignited. But the question lingered. Would he rise to the occasion when push came to shove? Jamal's resolve hardened with each passing day. The electric anticipation he'd felt beneath the streetlights was now transformed into actionable energy. As he prepared for his first gathering, he delved deeper into his thoughts, crafting a vision. A sanctuary where words could flow without hesitation. This notion had taken root, compelling him to reach out not just within his circle, but beyond. His work life as a delivery driver was unremarkable, yet instrumental. It allowed him to observe the world, witness the brief encounters that punctuated daily routines. Every delivery was a potential site for connection, a passing moment where feelings could surface. He began to seek conversations with patrons, asking them light questions that often revealed deeper sentiments hidden behind their smiles or brusque replies. He found that people were eager to share, a woman recalling the laughter of her departed husband, a young man expressing frustration with dreams going unfulfilled. Jamal nurtured these dialogues, his understanding of vulnerability expanding. Despite this progress, whispers of self-doubt still echoed loudly in his mind. What right did he have to orchestrate a gathering of souls when he was still grappling with his own past? Each journal entry was gripped by questions cloaked in insecurity. Would his own narrative align with those he aimed to connect with? The fabric of his existence seemed more torn than stitched together, and leading others felt paradoxical. But wasn't that the essence of humanity, to weave together threads of struggle and strength? To bolster his confidence, Jamal began practicing. He took pieces of personal anecdotes and structured them into short narratives. Sitting in the solitude of his cramped apartment, he stood in front of a mirror, rehearsing ways to gently initiate conversations that could encourage authentic sharing. He imitated and refined his tone, searching for the approachable blend between authority and kinship. Each session presented moments of clarity, a realization that applying the vulnerability he sought to expose in others was as vital as listening to their truths. The day of the gathering arrived, heavy with promise and fear. Jamal could hardly concentrate. His returns from work were sluggish, the anticipation twisting his stomach into tight knots. He had shared his idea with a few casual acquaintances, and when they expressed interest, that flicker of hope reignited within him. But doubt shadowed it, creeping back with relentless weight. Standing at the designated meeting spot, Jamal felt like he was at a precipice. Would the chairs filled with warm bodies be seats of shared experience, or would they sit empty, a testament to his failure? Each passing moment cemented his choice, whether to step back or hastily retreat to the safety of obscurity. With a deep breath, he felt the pulse of the park, the laughter of children still echoing from earlier. Then the first few individuals arrived. They trickled in, 2 women, a couple of men, and a teenager. A mixture of curiosity and apprehension hung in the air. He gestured them forward. In this small formation, a stark realization began to dawn on him. The act of showing up held its own kind of bravery. He wasn't alone in this endeavor. They were all there to unearth their stories together. As he initiated the first round of introductions, Jamal's heart raced, yet he committed to ensuring that each individual felt seen and heard. One by one they shared, and it became evident that the gathering, while humble, was rich in potential. He discovered a tendon that bound everyone there, an ache for connection amid their noise, a yearning to break down the isolation that often came hand in hand with silence. Yet just as the vulnerability pulsed through the group, a jarring thought pierced his clarity. Would his past be a burden or a blessing? Would his journey define the way others perceived their own struggles? At that moment, he recognized that the connection he sought wasn't merely a framework for others. It was a lifeline for himself as well. How could one man's journey resonate and lift others when it was so fraught with complications? That question loomed as he spoke, sparking more revelations than he anticipated. And suddenly, as he witnessed the genuine exchanges unfold, he understood. This was no ordinary moment. What he initiated here was destined to morph into something larger than any of them could fathom. But with that clarity came a deeper concern that settled in the pit of his stomach, a realization that perhaps sharing their stories wasn't just an exercise in vulnerability. What if their narratives were intertwined in ways he couldn't foresee, leading them all into waters more turbulent than they anticipated? The gathering was just the beginning, but Jamal could sense a tempest brewing just beyond the immediate shores. Would they be ready to navigate the tumult when the waves of their truths crashed together? Jamal observed as the initial awkwardness transformed into an unanticipated openness. Their stories curled around him like warm breaths, enveloping him and igniting a blend of exhilaration and trepidation. The themes of grief and aspiration intermingled, creating a tapestry far richer than he expected. Yet within the intoxicating whirl of shared experiences, uncertainty gnawed at him. What remained unspoken felt heavier than their voiced struggles. He caught himself scrutinizing the two women closely, their laughter sitting just beneath the surface of grief. One of them, Marissa, had recounted the moment she'd lost her father, and Jamal watched the raw emotion flicker in her eyes. The memories pressed against her like a wave, waiting to crash, and he sensed they all shared a collective understanding of heartbreak. Jamal cleared his throat, injected confidence into his voice. "Marissa," he began cautiously, "what do you think your father would have wanted you to do with the pain?" The question hung in the air, a hesitant probe into the depths of their humanity. Another man, Elias, spoke up with a tremor in his voice. "Maybe he'd want us to shape it into something meaningful." That simple statement ignited a bond that threaded through their gathering, allowing vulnerabilities to twist and intertwine more freely. They dove deeper, unearthing layers of fear and ambition, laughter emerging through tears, a paradox of existence that they all grasped. Jamal felt something awaken within him. He wasn't simply guiding others, he was moving toward his own healing. Yes, there was still jaggedness from his past, but tonight it felt more like an element of connection than a source of shame. Yet, as the group evolved, a shadow flickered beyond their circle, a lurking specter of personal confrontations that he long evaded. How do I confront my own traumas? The very narratives he sought to guide others through collided with his wobbling foundation. As the evening wore on, each shared story simultaneously fortified and challenged his resolve. Moments of clarity struck him like lightning. He began to see the truth in the complexity of their wrapped narratives. None of them were neatly packaged. They bled into one another like paint colors mingled on a canvas. Amid the heartwarming connections, he felt the weight of responsibilities shifting. Leading them wasn't just about facilitating a discussion. It was about embodying the stories they poured into the air, the good, the bad, and the unresolved. And then, with the sun dipping low, he was met with a dreadful realization. What if binding them together pulled at strings that shouldn't be touched? A sudden rush of panic and uncertainty surged through him. The stories they shared had roots that might extend into painful places. Inside, a war raged. Would embracing their vulnerabilities bring them closer or catalyze chaos? His vision of uplifting narratives now flicked with shadows of potential disruption. "Let's pause for a moment," he murmured, sensing the shift in their emotional climate. "I think we need to reflect on where we're headed." Voices quieted. their anticipation palpable. Jamal instinctively held the weight of their shared journeys, the acknowledgement of trepidation swirling around him. In the silence, he felt each heartbeat resonating against the walls of doubt. They stood at a crossroads of healing and potential anguish. How they decided to navigate this space bore greater implications than he envisioned. As he contemplated the next step, a disquiet loomed just out of sight, a voice inside him insisting that he confront not only their stories but his as well, urging him to reconcile his past before leading others through the murky waters of theirs. The gathering had unlocked a door, but what lay beyond was obscured and fraught with bravery. Jamal felt the urgency swell like a cresting wave. How would he guide them when he himself stood unsteady on the brink? The moment for clarity approached, and with it, a question clawed at the edges of his consciousness. Was he prepared to confront the truths that could shatter him as much as unite them? In the dim light of the community center, Jamal's heart raced as he stood before the group, now familiar yet laden with expectations. The shared moments from their last meeting clung to him, like a collective breath held in anticipation of deeper exploration. He had led them into the waters of vulnerability, but the real test lay ahead. Could he foster the strength needed to navigate the turbulent truths that awaited? The previously interconnected narratives reverberated in his mind, but now their edges felt sharper. Each participant's story was a thread tugging at his own. As he surveyed their expectant faces, Jamal recognized their vulnerability mirrored his own. In the blush of discomfort, he felt an undeniable sense of responsibility. This was not simply a dialogue. It was an exploration of shared humanity. "Thank you all for being here again," he began, attempting to steady the tremor in his voice. "We've touched some very real and heavy pieces of our lives, and today I want us to continue weaving our stories together, but with an openness to face the questions that arise from our experiences." He paused, taking a breath to summon conviction. "Are you all ready to move beyond just sharing, to dive deeper?" A murmur of agreement passed through the group as they exchanged glances. The connection among them had coalesced, a delicate tapestry woven from threads of pain and resilience. Yet promises of vulnerability hung heavy. The specter of uncomfortable questions loomed, a potential risk to the support they had built. As he shuffled through his notes, an unexpected wave of inspiration surged within him. Jamal gestured for a volunteer, inviting someone to share again, encouraging the depths that had remained untouched. And so, one by one, they opened their hearts, a raw outpouring of tales that echoed the courage he sought to embody. But as they shared, a yearning knowledge struck him. These stories were brimming with implications. Jamal realized it wasn't enough to simply share. They must also grapple with the shadows of each narrative. How had pain, fear, and resilience sculpted them into who they were today? What choices had defined their paths forward? Yet self-doubt prowled at the corners of his mind. Would he craft a space where honesty flourished, or would he unintentionally unleash chaos amidst the rawness? Determined not to falter, he opened the floor to dialogue after each shared experience. "How did that challenge shift your understanding of yourself?" he asked after a woman spoke of her struggle with loss. As participants wrestled with these questions, Jamal felt a vibrant undercurrent of transformation ripple through the room. No longer was it a stagnant exchange of stories. They were now plotting possibilities for growth, navigating through treacherous terrain but anchored in collective strength. In this intention-driven space, Jamal felt renewed purpose coursing through him. He was shaping something monumental, a gathering grounded not merely in narrative, but in communal healing. What began as whispers of their pasts morphed into tangible threads of resilience, a unifying force rising alongside the struggles dissected with honesty. But as conversations deepened, A daunting quandary emerged in his thoughts. Would he maintain equilibrium or unravel beneath the weight of others' truths? Jamal found himself standing at yet another precipice. A pull toward authenticity lay before him, but fear wrestled with ambition. He turned to the group, acknowledging the myriad of stories combining, the weighty emotions encapsulated. In sharing these experiences, we forge connections capable of breeding change, he expressed earnestly. But what happens when we confront the faded chapters of our own tales? Can we find strength in examining our vulnerabilities openly? As he posed the question, a hush descended. They were edging into the very personal territory he had once feared to tread, but courage propelled him forward. "I'll go first," he asserted, heart racing. "To be truthful, sharing my life means acknowledging my failures and traumas, too. I grew up struggling to find my place, often feeling lost within the shadows that others have only begun to glimpse." Each word somehow lifted burdens hidden deep within him, and as he peeled back his layer, it revealed an unforeseen reverberation. Vulnerability fortified him in the process, laying the groundwork for others to join him. The conversations flowed in layers, their collective honesty weaving a blanket of heartfelt dialogue. Jamal began to see clarity take shape. Just as his past shaped him, it also offered the potential for transformation within each participant. Finally, after what felt like hours, a gentle wave of collective emotion washed over them as they concluded their session. The laughter and tears mixed like colors on a canvas, imparting a deeper understanding of their interconnected lives. Yet amidst the convoluted mess of emotions, Jamal faced the whirlwind within. His duty as a conduit for healing demanded unwavering focus. The echo of their shared truths rang in his ears, tinder for his growth-igniting flame. Through the intertwining of their experiences, he now recognized a tangible mutual strength blossoming, a collective thread binding them together. In that moment of realization, Jamal felt a stunning wave of gratitude envelop him. Not only was he harnessing his own story, but also forging bonds that had the potential to lead to meaningful change, not just for him, but for everyone present. After the meeting, he felt revived, no longer defined by his past, but rather as part of an evolving narrative full of possibilities. Their moment together would grow beyond the boundaries of this room, something sustainable and powerful, and while he stood at the helm, each story interlaced with his own would spiral into something transformative. The next step loomed before him, a dream now crystallizing into action. Rather than merely facilitating these discussions, he aimed to connect them to resources, learning opportunities, and advocacy platforms. Together, they would harness their collective voices and experiences to foster change, a force breaking the very cycles they sought to escape. As Jamal left that day, determination ignited within him. Today's gathering was not merely an encounter, but the starting point of something larger, a quest for empowerment born from vulnerability. This embodiment of growth resonated deeper than he had ever imagined, and the world beyond beckoned him forward. Now the question remained, could he lead this movement to fruition? Would he weather the storm of challenges and emerge victorious, both for himself and everyone in his new, steadfast community? The answers awaited, but he felt invigorated and emboldened, ready to navigate the path ahead with unyielding resolve. And with each step he took, Jamal felt the ripples of change begin to echo through the very fabric of their shared experiences. This was not merely about him anymore. It was a call to the collective souls, yearning for liberation from their own narratives. The true journey had begun, igniting the fierce power of healing through honesty, forever intertwined in their stories, a sum far greater than the individual parts. Now the time has come to extend this transformative journey to you. Subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire you to face your challenges head-on. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and let others discover these powerful transformations. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your voice matters in this journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread the change we can build together.